Tynya is a dear friend and is a woman of great strength and spiritual presence, and a active worker at the Center for Spiritual Awareness in West Sacramento. So, wonderful.
Thank you. So it's good to be with you guys this evening. You know, when Lauren reached out to me, of course through Gretchen, he said, you recommended me. Oh, this underground that we have going on here after the years of being at EDD all the time, so exciting to be here. And so when Lauren reached out to me, he mentioned to me the word transformation. And so at my center, I attend the Center for Spiritual Awareness in West Sacramento. We talk about transformation all the time. Anytime you talk about religion or spirituality, you know, the process of coming into that or being on the path is transformative, if you will. And so when he said that, I said, oh, sure, I'll talk about transformation. He's like, no, I'm going to talk about your transformative journey. How did you get to this place where you are today, what you see today? I have a blog, and my blog is one that I think is one for the living. It encourages you when you hit those bumps in the road, when life is not going just how you want it to go. And it's encouraging, it validates, it supports. And so through that process, I have began to put together daily affirmations, and so I've just become this individual that wherever I go, I kind of transform the planet. And so that really has been one of my goals over the years. And so I will share my transformative journey. And the way that I'm going to do that is I'm going to tell you a little bit about my story where I think I've transformed the most. I'll talk about some of my lessons learned. And then I'll share some of my creative expressions, poetic expressions, sometimes they're referred to. I'm a writer, a blogger, and a poet. And so throughout my entire life, I have always used the gift of words to articulate the situation. And so I'll be sharing some of my expressions with you as well. So it'll be a full evening, and come on, let's go on the ride together. All right. So I'll start out with what I believe transformation is all about. I believe that life is a series of transformations. And I want to demystify that word, you know. We all have had transformative experiences in our lives. If you live long enough, you will too have those experiences. And so with that, I'm going to talk about the parallel track, that how I've used the gift of words to pull myself out of despair, to get myself back on track with these life changes that I've experienced. So Webster says the definition of transformation is an act, a process, or an instance of transforming or being transformed. Okay, I said, okay, I get that. Well, it didn't resonate with me. And so I dug a little deeper. And I found a definition that really hit home for me. And I found it in the Business Dictionary. And it talked about transforming organizations. This is what it said. The process of profound and radical change, new direction, not a turnaround, because a turnaround implies incremental progress on the same plane. Transformation, change of character, has no resemblance of the current configuration or structure. So you feel me now? Yes, absolutely. And that's what I'm talking about, these transformative, that I come out on the other side, I'm not the same. That I enter into the situation, when I came out, I had changed. And so I will share that. And I'll start with what I call the chief of transformative journey is Jesus. The transformation, when you say that word, is not new to Jesus. And so God expects us to radically transform, to be different. And so with that, I use some of the teachings of Jesus Christ. And it talks about in Romans 12:2, it says, do not conform any longer to the patterns of this world. Be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind. Be ye transformed the renewing of your mind. Your thinking is different. And so with your thinking being different, everything follows with that. Your life, your actions, your steps are all in a different rhythm. This transformation is like a metamorphosis. It's at the same magnitude when you're talking about a caterpillar becoming a butterfly. It's the same type of thing. When you come in and you say, I accept Jesus Christ as my personal Savior, that is transformative. Your life is different and you're not the same person. So I will share with you some of my transformations that I've experienced in my life and how I've come to be who I am today. And I'll start with my childhood transformations. I grew up in a family that had its fair share of dysfunction and problems. And our family was very diverse in the mid-60s, diverse in race as well as worldview. My mom was Irish, my dad was African American with Native American roots. We led a very carefree life. We were the flower kids of our time. And some affectionately called us hippies. They remember that. Wearing curly naturals and bell-bottom pants and hippie vests with the fringes, and of course no shoes, never any shoes. We were free spirits. And then life changed. Life changed for us when our parents decided that they wanted to get a divorce. I was 6 years old, but I was the oldest of 6 kids. So at a very early age, I started to carry the world on my shoulders. And so we moved around after my parents' divorce. And so our protected little bubble was no longer there any longer. And then one day, I found myself in the middle of the Watts riots in 1965. And it was like yesterday, and it was a very scary thing for a small kid at that time. Seeing the National Guard and seeing tanks going down the middle of the street. All the fires that were burning and the angry people that were all around, just seemed like everything was out of control. This was the first time that I actually had to deal with the issue of race and all of the consciousness or the lack of consciousness that comes with that territory. Now, the one thing that I could say is that my insulated world definitely changed. And so I had to kind of step up. And even as a 6-year-old, and who told me I had to take this on? No one did. But I just kind of took it on because I was the oldest child. And I did experience a lot of love and support from my parents. And so that wasn't the issue. I think a lot of it was in my head taking on responsibility. And I knew without a doubt that I was loved by both of my parents. But nevertheless is that I know that I suffered some emotional trauma during this experience. But I know that I'm not alone. We've all experienced emotional trauma growing up as kids. In fact, even those of us who were born into emotionally healthy families still have something along the way that has scarred us. That to this day, you'll say it and it'll just hit that little spot. It's still tender. And so with that, the transformation that I experienced during that time is that I began to look at myself as a victim. Totally different than what you would expect, right? That it was a woe is me. Woe is me, my parents are divorced. And guess what? I started to get attention, right? So here I am living in South Central Los Angeles. I'm a biracial kid. So I wasn't white enough to be white. I wasn't black enough to be black. And so here I was in this kind of suspended state of interacting with people. But I learned very early that when people felt sorry for me, that I got a lot of mileage out of that, right? And so when you start to get feedback from people and they validate your suffering, oh my gosh, right? So for that moment, or maybe for years, it felt good to have someone look at me with those sympathetic eyes and say, you poor thing, your parents are divorced. Yeah, they're divorced. Then I would get things, right? Because people felt sorry for me. And I succumbed to victim mentality during this time. But I realized during my experience in a class in 1998, I could see myself in the description of a victim. It was me. It was written all over me. And over time, I began to see how hitching my wagon to that old story was no longer working for me. It was time for me to let it go. And it was simple to begin to identify with being a victim, but it was hard to be able to let it go, right? Because you have to unlearn. It's like in the core of your DNA. It is in the core of who you are because of these life experiences. And so I know that over time I was developing into someone that I didn't like. And so with that, I'm not insensitive about childhood and adult life events. I know that, some of the events that we experience can stick with us for the rest of our lives. But there are some experiences that you never forget that trigger a flood of emotions in the most unexpected scenarios. So you think that you're healed, and then you go along and then someone comes and they poke at that little spot. And then your bags fly open, right? The ones that you had comfortably and so nicely packed, and you keep them out of sight. But we know that when we have these unhealed wounds, that there are opportunities for healing. I call them calls for love. And so when these opportunities come up, like when my bag popped open and all my victimhood was all over the place, that forced me to have to do some work. And so with that, I was wrestling with my emotional demons. And in the battle, I knew that I was in a lot of pain. And so I had to reconcile my stories, because guess what? The stories were no longer working anymore. I had told the stories for so long that I don't remember if that was really the story or if that was the story that I was telling. Did that really happen, so long ago? So eventually, I came to a fork in the road where I had to make some decisions about that. And so the lessons that I learned was that people who help you out don't always have to be blood relatives. They don't always have to be the ones that call themselves family members. You are more than your circumstances. You are never limited by any experience that you have in this life. That you are a child of God, and there is nothing that can stop you or block you but you. And that life is magnificent and brilliant if we just tap into that divine energy. And so I wrote a piece called You Are Magnificent. So what does magnificent mean? Magnificent means majestic, superb, brilliant, radiant, splendid, noble, outstanding, the highest degree of excellence, exalted, and grand. That is who you are in God's eyes. So I hope you understand that each and every one of you is magnificent with the blessing of God's grace. Did you know that God's got your feet while you run this race? Those of you who have raised children, who have prepared them for the next season, we thank you for your contribution. You are magnificent beyond reason. Those of you who teach our babies for the future, leave us with a lesson. You are magnificent and truly a blessing. Those of you who work the 9 to 5, making a contribution to our system, you are the support that this country stands on, and you are magnificent. You can never come to God with too much stuff. Don't you think God knows how to call your stuff? Magnificent people, that God has a message for you. Go inside to that place of peace and simply see what God wants you to do. As stated in Matthew 5:16, let your light shine before all men. Show your good works wherever you go, even when the road bends. I sing a song of jubilation because I am free. The majesty of God is upon me. God said, still yourself and let your light shine. It's about time. Shine it wherever you go. Don't need no reason to rhyme. Magnificent means splendid, noble, outstanding, exalted, and grand. Magnificent people are the ones still standing and expanding with a clear understanding that we are awesome and wonderful, terrific, and we are all that is good. We're simply magnificent people, and I hope that's understood. So my next transformation has to do with family illness. And I'm sure, many of you probably have experienced that. I call myself a recovering caregiver. Because I'm always trying to rescue and save. Remember, I'm the oldest kid, right? So being the oldest kid, my natural instinct is wherever I go, is that caregiver, to the point that it caused me so much grief in my life. And so I say that to remind myself that I'm always in that state of reminding myself that I can't rescue the world. Because what I was doing is every time someone had a problem, I take your problem on. And then I'm the only one working on the problem, and you're all doing other things. And I'm holding your problem.
And thank you very much.
Right? I'm sure you recognize, especially being in ministry, you know you're holding the bag. And so with that, I realized that that was a very transformative time in my life as well. In the early 1980s, my mom had a very nasty fall. And at the time, I was working, early days of working for the state of California in the early 1980s. And at the time, Gene, I was working for Public Employees Retirement System in Southern Cal. And life was amazing. I was selling real estate. I was living the life in Hollywood, you know, living around all these stars. It was wonderful. Denzel Washington was my neighbor before he was famous. I remember, yes, oh, it was fabulous. And so my mom had this nasty fall. So I get the call, I go to the hospital, and my mom had cut her face. And so I'm thinking, okay, we'll stitch her up and we'll go home. And so the doctor pulls me aside and he says, you know, have you noticed any memory loss with your mom? And I'm like, no, because I'm living my life, you know. When I go, hey mom, how you doing? Good, good, good. Oh, bam, okay, I'm gone, right? I'm living. And so he says, well, I think, you know, there's some memory loss going on with your mom. I'm not quite sure, because my mom at the time was 42 years old, right? So, and I was 22. And so we didn't know quite what was going on. So they wanted, you know, more tests. And what came to be, it took us about 4 years to find out that my mom had early onset of Alzheimer's. And because she was so young, that's why it took so long for them to find out. And so now they know, because I just recently heard that if you get an infection in the brain, that it can also cause the same symptoms of Alzheimer's. Well, that's what my mom had. She had some kind of an infection that caused the early onset of Alzheimer's. And so it changed our lives forever, because my mom couldn't take care of herself anymore, so she had to move in with me. It simply just changed our whole life. So I took care of my mom for about 5 years until I couldn't do it anymore. I actually had to leave my job for a while, and something with being the oldest kid, I just took it all on. Now I've got 5 other brothers and sisters, but I'm not asking them for help because I'm superwoman. I can do all of this by myself. Well, not. The biggest lesson that I learned is that you need support. You need help as well. But I didn't know how to ask for help, because to me, if I asked for help, that was a sign of weakness, right? So it wasn't until I almost had my meltdown and I had to bring my family members together and have that hard talk. I need help. And so all of my siblings pitched in, and each one took a day to take care of my mom, and we even had a nurse that came in and helped us along with this journey. And so my goal was to keep my mom at home. But my goal was to keep my mom at home regardless of what I needed to do for myself, sacrifice of self. So everything was about my mom. And so I didn't care if I didn't have any more energy. I didn't care if there was nothing else, because my mom was a good mother and I wanted to be there. So the lessons that I learned is that you can't take care of anyone until you take care of yourself. That's a huge one. There's a law of self-preservation that says that you first, then others. You see? You got that one?
Could say that on your plane.
Right? And to reach out for support, because you really need to know. When someone asks me, you know, what is the biggest lesson, is to ask for help. Is to find your support, your resources, whether it's people, systems, it doesn't matter. The point is that when you're taking care of someone who has an illness, a long-term illness, that to do it on your own is crazy. What support do you need? Now I would go to a support group. I would be in a room with other people that are experiencing the same thing that I'm experiencing, instead of being in my silo and isolating. That was not healthy. Because when I came out of that, my mom passed away August 23rd, 1989. When she passed away, I didn't have a life anymore. I had completely lost myself in this whole experience. And I took care of my mom for 8 years. I wrote a piece called Hope is Everything When It's All You Have. The one thing thing that we all have in common is hope. It allows you to cope when you can't figure out your scope. H is for the headway I make when I get out of the way, allowing me to get back on track when I stray. O is for the opportunities that I can capitalize on when I free up my mind, unlocking limitations that take away my joy and leave me behind. P is for the possibilities I see when I look in the mirror, staying in touch with my higher power, allowing me to see clearer. E is for everything that I have at my fingertips. If I choose it, I can have anything I want if I commit. Hope is everything when it's all you have. Do you have hope today? Hope is what gets you up in the morning and starts you on your way. You pick the attitude that you display that day. Hope can pull you out of a black hole and it doesn't cost you a cent, taking you to the next level. For that, be content. Stop getting in arguments. Hope can pull you out of depression and despair. You know when you just don't care. So why are you blowing smoke in the air? Hope can rebuild your emotional bank account, but you must do the work because there ain't no discounts. You have to have hope when you can't pay your bills and got to give up all your frills. God is where you are. It takes time to be still and get your refill. You have to choose hope or you lose it. Hope never leaves you. We turn a blind eye to it. So don't quit. People can't take your hope. You give your hope away. It's a blessing to wake up and love you every day. Insanity comes when I blame others for my stuff, I shout. Don't take much to figure that out, without a doubt. We have to remember that you can't control people, but you can control you. You're the only one who can change your attitude. So where's the gratitude? So there are things I must do for me before I flee. Get rid of debris, stop screaming like a banshee, get down on my knees, plead to thee, be my own MC. Don't you agree? So if you're fretting about debt, upset about threats, scared of silhouettes, so don't you forget, there are no regrets. Bust a sweat, do a duet, place a bet, but don't you dare let, because God is not finished with you yet. Hope is everything when it's all you have. So the next transformation for me was a spiritual one. Yay, that's the one. I faithfully, as a kid, attended church. We started out Catholic, and I remember my mom dropping us off at church so we could go to church, and she didn't go to church, but she made sure we went to church. It was something about that foundation she wanted us to have. And then years later, we wound up being a part of the AME movement, the African Methodist Episcopal Church. And we went to church on Sundays, we went Wednesday night services, we went to Bible study. We were very, very involved. And it was in those early days where we were taught that God is within each of us. God is in us. And then I got the message that no one enters the kingdom except through me, Jesus Christ. So I began to ask questions about that. Okay, is God in me, or do I have to go through Jesus Christ? So I was torn. So as I began to ask my teachers questions, they would all tell me the Bible says so, right? So then I would ask my mom, the Bible says so, right? And then I asked my pastor, and it was like, well, the Bible says so. That's the reason. That's it. And so church stopped working for me, probably about the age of 14. I told my mom, I don't want to go back to church. It's just, I can't get a straight answer. I don't know what I believe in anymore. And so I became anti-church for a very long time. But I know during the time when my mom got sick, I started to yearn for something. I started to yearn for community. I needed something outside of myself. There was something calling for, connection. And so I found myself going to a local church, and it didn't work for me. But then a friend told me about another place, and the name of the church was called Unity Fellowship. And I'll never forget it. Because Unity Fellowship was known as the gay church in the neighborhood. It had a negative stigma attached to it. But it was something about when I went into that church that I felt at home. The bishop, I remember the words very clearly, he called it liberation theology. You have come home, my child. The Bible is still your best tool, and Jesus is still available to you. There are no blocks. There is no separation, right? And so it was there where I found my community. It was there where I was able to connect. And then during that time, it was in the 1980s, that's during the time of the HIV and AIDS epidemic. And I lost a lot of friends during that time. And I think most of us probably did as well. And so it was during that time I got very involved with AIDS Project Los Angeles and the Minority AIDS Project. And I still had this longing for something else. It still wasn't enough where I was. And so one day I went to a place called Agape, and Agape, the International Center for Truth. And when I went there, I was introduced to spiritual principles. And spiritual principles allowed me to transcend any condition, any appearance of limitation that I had in my life. That probably was the most transformative experience that I ever personally went through. That is where I learned the many references for God. I learned about Buddha, I learned about Muhammad, Jesus, and divine intelligence, universal presence, the sacred grandmother tree. And I learned about all the different paths to God. And I learned that I could be in choice at any time. And so I began to take classes, and in taking classes, I had this incredible thirst for more knowledge and more knowledge. I became a practitioner, and a practitioner requires 2 years of study. And as a practitioner, you pray with people, you offer spiritual counseling and coaching. And I'm now currently a ministerial intern, and so I'm almost finished. Next year I'll graduate. And very involved in my community, especially in the interfaith community. I love crossing over paths and bringing people together, because we realize that we all want the same thing. We all it's all God. It's all God. No matter what your path is, we wind up at the same place. And so with that, I wrote a piece called My Spiritual Cosmology. And this is what I believe, because it was during this time that I remember my sister coming to me saying, "We don't know what you believe anymore. You're not a Christian. Who are you?" It's like, I believe in God, just like you. But because the way I was showing up on the planet was much different, I was doing more meditation, it's like you're doing all that Om stuff, We don't know what that means, where's your Bible? I said, I still reference, that is a wonderful teaching, absolutely, I still reference the Bible. I said, it's just one of my teachings. And so with that, with my family, they had to kind of transform with me as well. And so in the process, I wrote this piece called My Spiritual Cosmology. I believe God is all there is, the Alpha and the Omega, and that there is only one power and one presence on the planet. I believe that everything around me started as pure energy. There's no beginning, no end, no limits in divine spirit. I believe that I'm a spiritual being having a human experience, and if I change my thinking, I surely will change my life. I am whole, perfect, and complete just as I am. Right here, right now, nothing needed to be added. I am perfect in the eyes of God. I believe I have at my fingertips the abundance of the universe, and I freely partake in the process. It is my divine birthright. I believe God is the divine essence of all life and fills all of creation, and I am one with God, surrounded by this beauty and this harmony. I was meant to create life, not to react to it. I believe that universal spirit individualizes as me. Where I am, God is. I am one with God. I am God in action. My body is God's body. I am inseparably one with spirit. And I believe that I have a direct line to spirit because I am spirit. Divine love intelligence is the core of my being. And behind the visible is the invisible power of the energy of the universal mind, simply known as God. So that's what I believe. So my next big transformation was my coming out time. And when I was in high school, I remember I graduated at the age of 16. It was a year ahead of time. And at the age of 17, that's when I moved to Hollywood. And so that's when I got my exposure. Oh boy, did I get exposure. I learned a lot about the fast life of Hollywood. Needless to say, sex was a big thing. You know, it was free flowing. Life was wonderful about being free, being who you are, loving whoever you wanted to love, no limitations. And then the mid-80s came with the HIV/AIDS blow up, changed everything, everything. And so I learned about myself for a very long time during that time. And I was in the closet, bisexual, because it was much more comfortable to be bi than it was to be a lesbian. And so it wasn't until my mom passed away in 1989, that's when I came out. That's when I came out. I was like, okay, now I can come out of the closet. But no, I didn't come out of the closet. My sister pulled me out of the closet. It was not my choice. She was reading my journal one day and I came home. And she goes, what is this? I'm like, God, because I write everything, right? So I told the whole story. Oh my gosh, there it is. And so I was in exile from my family for about 6 months. They threatened me. They told me that I had lost my mind, that I had been brainwashed. They were going to kidnap me, and then they were going to do something to my partner at the time because that person had brainwashed you. And if your mother was here, I remember my aunt telling me, if your mother was here, this would kill her, right? You know the words. They just turn it, turn it, and turn it. And so with that, I removed myself from my family for a while because, and sometimes you have to do that. Sometimes you have to leave, the core and go off to yourself, like Jesus did in the wilderness, right? Because that was time to check in and reevaluate and let go and figure out what this new is going to be. And sometimes you got to unplug in order to do that. And so that's when I look at that time, that 6 months. And at the end of the 6 months, I had my sister standing there apologizing. And she was saying to me that, this time away was horrible. I love you. And I don't understand your lifestyle, but I love you. And so I'm going to accept whatever it is that goes along with all the stuff you're doing, right? Because I know it's only a phase, right? And so the lessons that I learned during that time is that true love really is unconditional. And that I am free to love whoever I want without fear of my safety, without fear of who's going to find out about it. And so with that, I wrote this piece called, I Am Gay, and God Made Me This Way. So why is it so hard to tell the truth? Why can't we be our true, authentic self? Why can't I show up on the planet just as I am? I am gay, and yes, God made me this way. I was afraid of what people would say if they would sway, or even if they would stay. I can no longer hide, because God is by my side, and I am taking this message worldwide. I don't have to hide. I was born this way. I am gay. Is my gayness a reflection on you in any way? I am gay. I am a spiritual being. I'm not obscene. I'm just a human being. I gave so many people my heart, and when they found out about my gayness, I was ripped apart. Sure, they're just being who they are, but I'm not going to blame. They told me that they loved me, but I got all the shame. I sat outside my family's dreams, and I lingered like a nightmare to them, making them want to scream. They kept telling me it's just a phase and I'd get over it soon. They say it's like a disease with doom and gloom. But deep down in my heart, I know it isn't so, because I have to be strong so I can show all those people who threw me in a bin and thought they would win. No matter how hard they try, I will never give in. I don't get it. What's the point of hurting me? So I can feel bad? So I can understand what it's like to be mad or sad? Well, I already know how that feels. Did you hear my squeals when I had to reveal how I feel? What's the big deal? I got the raw deal. Be for real. You say I'm different and you don't understand my lifestyle, and you're uncomfortable with me and you say I'm hostile? diversity. Diversity is a mosaic. It's a rainbow. Diversity is a spectrum of the universe. Diversity is amazing and beautiful because it's all good. Diversity is you and me and all of our splendor. Diversity knows no limits. And diversity is valuing all Dorothy's children under the rainbow. So I'm done. I'm done with repressing who I am. Hiding my light because I no longer give a damn. What you think of me no longer matters to me. I can coexist with you and we can let it be because I'm free. I can march in a pride parade on Saturday and then go to church and praise the Lord on Sunday. I thank God and Holy Spirit for making me this way. And I am who I am because she made me this way. Who cares if I'm gay? I'm proud to be me because my world is my world and I take it as a victory. So today, I stand and I say I am proud to be gay. And if I had a choice, I'd have it no other way. Because later on in life, folks will suddenly see that the reason that I was gay, because I was just being me. And the last transformation that I will share with you is 30 years of state government service. I retired. I started working at the age of 14 and working in one of those programs for students at the time. I was working in the food stamp program. So from age 14 on to age 56, I worked nonstop. And so I look back over my state service and I say, well done, well done. I woke up one day, you know, folks say, well, you're not old enough to retire yet, right? But something happened when that 30 hit, that clock hit. I was with my partner at the time. We were at Fort Bragg's, looking at the beautiful water, just appreciating God's beauty, the birds, the beautiful sun beating down on my face, the wind, and it just became very clear, that creative energy, you can retire. You got choices. So I went back and I checked and I was like, oh boy, it looks better than I thought. And so all of a sudden, it's like doors just opened up for me. And so with that, I retired. But it's taken me over almost a year to adjust to this new me, right? Because you don't realize how much of your identity is tied in with that job, right? Although we say we're more than our job, but really that whole process of work is entrenched in our DNA. And there's something in us when you stop working that says you need to be doing something. You need to be doing something. You're on automatic pilot. Well, what should I be doing? Then all of a sudden you do too much, right? You take on all these things and you start doing all these things trying to find it. What is it? And so I think about 6 months into my retirement is when I finally let go. When I finally exhaled and said, okay. And so today I can say, I'm not there yet. But guess what? I'm okay with it. I'm in that in-between. I have let go of my old world, but my new world hasn't been clearly defined yet. And I'm okay with that. You see, that's a peace. That's being okay with the divine unfolding of the process. See, that's that spiritual foundation that you stand on when you don't know what's around that corner. But you know that God has never forsaken me, has never left me. And I know that through this process that you are with me. You are guiding my steps. You are guiding exactly what I need to be doing. And I trust that. That's what faith is. Faith of a mustard seed. I can't see it, but you know what? I believe it in the depths of my soul. That wherever I need to be, whoever needs to show up is going to show up. That's that deep trusting from this spiritual journey. And so being able to release the structures of membership and groups, being able to let go of politics and work expectations, right? That I am in this state of suspension, and it's good. And it's creative because I'm allowing God to do what God needs to do with me. And so however it shows up, I bless it. Because the one thing that I've learned in this process is that I am only as aware as my current state of consciousness. God's expansion for me is bigger than anything that I can ever imagine. So I stopped blocking my blessings because it doesn't fit in my neat little box. Well, guess what? God blew up the box. Blew up the box. And so I know that there are many opportunities for me now. I am traveling more. I am spending time with friends. I can go to lunch with a friend without going, I got to get out of here. Okay, I only got this amount of time. Okay, I can meet you for break. Let's walk around the Capitol. Okay, get something done. All right, all of that hurriedness. I have been able to just exhale. And this last year has been transformative for me. To be able to not have to go fix it, not have to make it right for somebody, not have to go show up because somebody blew something up, you know? It feels good to be in this place. I play in the dirt more. I love gardening, and I love bonsaiing my trees. I love playing with my succulents. Those are my babies. Those are my babies. And so now I'm able to offer executive coaching and consulting skills, and I offer it to the churches. All of the organizational development work that I did for state government, I'm now doing that with the spiritual community. I'm doing team building with churches. I'm working with boards of trustees to help them to deal with their conflicts. And I'm loving it, every bit of it, because I can take as much of it or as little of it as I want, because I'm in choice. That's what I worked the 30 years for. And so now I'm doing what I want to do, and I'm shaping this new life. And so the lessons that I learned is that what I have learned is clearly mapped out in this next piece, and this will be my ending piece, and it's called I Stand Correct. I stand correct with my identity. I know where I come from, I understand the experiences of my people, and I stand on their shoulders, and I feel their strength. It is their strength that moves me through life. I know my history, you see, because I've got my facts straight as of late. I no longer wait for someone to tell me who I am. I have all the answers I need. They're right inside of me. Wow, what power I have. I am a queen with the abundance of the universe at my fingertips. I stand correct with my identity. I stand correct with my blackness. I stand correct with my skin color, knowing that this sweet golden skin tone is a piece of who I am. I am the color of golden honey that has been allowed to sweeten to perfection naturally by the sun. That's me, Miss Honey. Sweet in love and sweet in understanding. I embrace my blackness through my consciousness and through my understanding of truth. And I stand correct in my blackness. I stand correct in my full-figuredness. I am a voluptuous, full-figured sister, and I move with the quickest of ease, and I move in and out of a full consciousness existence about my body. I shine my fullness wherever I go, and I insist that you too recognize my fullness. And if you don't, you can't possibly get to know me. I am a big, beautiful, full-body sister who loves the world. I wear my happiness in full view for you to see. I stand correct in my full-figuredness. I stand correct in my sureness. I stand correct in my sureness of who I am and who I want to be. I know that I am forever evolving in my realness. I also know that I am only as sure as my current level of sureness, and I can feel good about embracing every season of my life, no matter how it shows up. I bless it anyway. I love and accept each phase of my life as meaningful. I stand correct that the universe is my divining rod and will let me know when it is time to move on. So I simply let go, and I let God, and I stand correct in my sureness. I stand correct with my age. I stand correct with my pearls of wisdom, my experience, bank account, and battle wounds from a long journey. I stand correct on this wealth of knowledge, and in this understanding of my journey, it is where I need to be. My truth today is that I no longer have to do it all by myself. I don't have to have all the right answers or even save the world. I stand correct in knowing this truth about me today because in this process, I live my correctness through my actions. And it shows up in how I live my life. I stand correct right here and right now with my age. I stand correct with my spiritual understanding. Knowing in my heart and soul that God is simply all there is, There is no spot where God is not, regardless of appearances. This is my cosmology. And I can add, subtract, or divide my spiritual understanding by this truth. I still come back to the same place. God is simply all there is. So today, I no longer look outside myself to find spiritual truth. I simply still myself and look within. And if I want God to hear me, I pray. If I want God to speak, if I want to speak to God, I meditate. And if I get off the path, I affirm my truth through mantras and affirmations. So it feels good to have choices today. My choices are simple. I stand correct in my spiritual understanding. So remember, transformation is the process of profound and radical change. New direction. Transformation, a change of character, no resemblance of the current configuration or structure. So there are 5 golden nuggets that assisted me on my journey with my personal transformations. First thing is I got clear on my vision and my mission, because that allowed me to make decisions that when something came up in my life, if it wasn't in alignment with where I was going or where I thought I should be, I could make a decision based on my purpose. I realized that shifting limiting beliefs, I'm not good enough, lack then, not enough, all of the limited thinking, that is not what God wants from me. God's universe is abundant. There are no limits. And I've learned to be grateful for life and every experience in it. Every experience. And when something negative shows up or the appearance of something negative, I bless it anyway. Because those are the times that I expand and I grow in profound ways that I never would have grown if it wasn't for that situation. And I remain open at the top, because my little small thinking, in God's world is just a small pea. And I know that God's forever expanding and growing and showing me what I need to be doing. And I could never do that on my own. And then the key is finding love from within. Don't look for it outside yourself. The love that you desire is coming from within, and it radiates out, and you will attract those beings that have that same light that you have. Valuable, valuable lessons. So most of us have experienced many transformations throughout life. Personal transformations, according to Scripture, is expected. The biggest lesson for me, the entire journey, is about love. Loving others, and more importantly, loving yourself. So I'll leave you with a quote from Ernest Holmes. He says this: love is within us. It cannot be destroyed. It can be ignored. To the extent that we abandon love, we feel it has abandoned us. Denying love is our only problem, and embracing it is the only answer. And through the power of love, we can let go of past history and begin again. Love heals, forgives, and makes us whole. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tynya. If there are questions or conversations you'd like to hold.
So any questions?
So I've got your poetry published.
I'm working on it.
should.
I know.
Okay.
I've got
It's
stuff.
awesome.
That's, well, now I have time,
Yeah, right.
I have tons, and like I said, I write a poem every time if someone passes away. I write a poem about them. There's a wedding, I write a poem. So yeah, I have tons of stuff. I just need to, get some order to it and then definitely publish.
Awesome.
Do you find one of the best things about being retired is not having the alarm clock go off?
Yes, that I can just kind of unfold daily. Yeah. My wife, well, I'm recently married, legally married.
Hi,
Jen. Just April. And so now, and she works for EDD too, so there's a bunch of EDD folks here.
Really? Oh, Lord.
And she's starting to feel, I need to retire now, because she has to get up 4 o'clock in the morning, she's at work at 6 o'clock in the morning, and so, yeah.
I hope she doesn't disturb you when she gets up at 4.
Yeah.
Oh, no, I don't even hear her. She can make all the noise in the world.
She don't.
Yes.
And in West Side, it's the
Spiritual Life Center?
It is the Center for Spiritual Awareness, and the website is csasacramento.org.
I teach in my center, I've been over